Tech millionaire CEO overcome with emotion after Black Maid who saved his life gives him quadruplets. Welcome back, dear friends. Tonight's story will remind you that sometimes the people who save our lives don't just heal our bodies, they change our hearts. If you believe real love is built on second chances and redemption, hit subscribe, drop a like and settle in. Jordan Miles gazed out through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Buckhead penthouse, the glittering Atlanta skyline reflecting in eyes that were sharp but tired. At 36, he had accomplished what many deemed impossible, a tech CEO who had built a company from scratch and turned it into a multi-million-dollar empire. Yet, despite the sleek modern furniture and the silent hum of smart home devices around him, Jordan felt an emptiness echoing in the cold, immaculate space. Money and success had bought him luxury, but connection and warmth were strangers in this lofty perch above the city. On this late summer evening, Jordan was, as usual, working. His penthouse also served as his home office. A glass desk strewn with the latest gadgets overlooked the twinkling lights below. A half-eaten takeout container sat forgotten beside his laptop. He ran a hand over his close-cropped hair and sighed. Another 14-hour day. Another series of lucrative deals and decisions. And yet, the nagging headache behind his temples reminded him he hadn't eaten a proper meal or slept well in days. "Mr. Miles, is there anything else you need before I leave for the day?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was the housekeeper assigned from the cleaning agency, a young woman, who had been quietly tidying the penthouse for the last couple of hours. Jordan barely glanced up, accustomed to staff coming and going without much notice. "That's fine, thank you." He paused, realizing he hadn't actually learned her name. There was a time he would have known every employee's name, but lately he'd grown distant, absorbed in his responsibilities. The woman standing by the doorway was Ava Turner, though he only recalled it after a second. She was 29, if he remembered the agency's brief profile, and had been coming by a few evenings a week to keep his place in order. Ava stepped forward slightly. "It's Ava, sir. Ava Turner, and I'm happy to stay a bit longer if you need anything." Her tone was polite, but Jordan detected a note of earnest concern underlying her words. She had noticed the dark circles under his eyes and the untouched food. Jordan shook his head and managed a curt smile. "No, Ava. I'll be fine. You can head home. Thank you." Ava hesitated for a moment. In that hesitation, Jordan sensed she wanted to say something more, perhaps to urge him to rest. But she simply nodded. "All right. Have a good night, Mr. Miles." As she turned to leave, Jordan's attention drifted back to his laptop screen. Numbers, proposals, and emails blurred together. The headache pounded harder. He stood and walked toward the kitchen, intending to get a glass of water to maybe take a painkiller. The room spun slightly as he stood, a wave of dizziness washing over him. Jordan frowned, pressing a hand to his forehead. Maybe he had pushed himself too far this time. Meanwhile, Ava rode the elevator down from the penthouse, thinking about her day. Her long braids were tied back in a neat ponytail, and her uniform, a simple navy polo with the cleaning company's logo and comfortable khaki pants, was spotless after hours of work. She was exhausted. She rode the elevator down to the lobby, massaging the stiffness in her neck. The penthouse had been immaculate, yet so impersonal. It gave Ava a pang of sympathy for the man living in such lonely perfection. Ava's phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked it, a text from her 17-year-old younger brother, Malik. "Can you bring some milk on your way back? We're out. Also, I aced my math test." She smiled to herself, pride and love swelling in her chest. Malik was her world. After their parents' death in a car accident 3 years ago, she had become his guardian and primary provider. That meant juggling multiple jobs, housekeeping in upscale homes and offices, by day, and catering gigs on weekends, just to keep them afloat. It wasn't easy, but seeing Malik thriving in school made every long day worth it. Ava texted back quickly, "Congrats, of course, I'll get the milk. Be home later, don't stay up too late." She slipped the phone away and let out a breath, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension. Part of her wanted to tell Malik how tired she was, how her feet ached, how the elevator she just rode probably cost more than her monthly rent. But she kept such worries to herself. Malik deserved to focus on his studies, not to fret about bills or his sister's fatigue. Stepping out into the warm night air, Ava headed toward the corner store a block away to pick up milk before catching her bus home. Halfway down the block, a thought struck her. She had left her light jacket upstairs in Mr. Miles's penthouse closet. Though the night was balmy, her apartment would be chilly from the AC, and she liked having that jacket for the ride. Biting her lip, she glanced at her watch. It was late, but retrieving it would only take a few minutes. Deciding it was worth the delay, Ava turned on her heel and hurried back. The doorman recognized her and allowed her to return to the penthouse floor. Moments later, Ava stepped off the private elevator into the foyer. To her surprise, the main door was slightly ajar. She was sure she had closed it upon leaving. A sense of unease prickled at her. Jordan was usually very security conscious. She pushed the door open further and called softly, "Mr. Miles." "It's Ava. I forgot my jacket." Silence, but the entry lights were still on, and down the hall she spotted the edge of Jordan's shoe protruding from around the corner. Ava's heart kicked in alarm. She rushed forward and found Jordan collapsed on the glossy marble floor of the hallway, lying limp on his side. His arm was outstretched toward the wall-mounted telephone, as if he'd been trying to call for help. "Oh my God, Mr. Miles," Ava cried, dropping to her knees beside him. Jordan's eyes were closed, his face clammy and pale. She gently shook his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" A faint groan was his only response. He was breathing, but shallowly, and when she pressed 2 fingers to his neck, his pulse fluttered erratically. Ava's own pulse thundered with panic, but she forced herself to focus. She had some basic first aid training from a previous job. Mind racing, Ava tilted his chin up to ensure his airway was open. "Mr. Miles, Jordan, wake up," she urged, but he remained limp. Seeing a small bleeding gash on his forehead, she realized he must have hit his head on the way down. Ava whipped out her phone and dialed 911, breathlessly giving the dispatcher the address, and explaining that the resident had collapsed, was semi-conscious, and possibly injured from a fall. While waiting for paramedics, Ava ran to the kitchen and grabbed a clean dish towel. Back at Jordan's side, she carefully pressed it to the cut on his forehead to stanch the bleeding. His eyelids fluttered at the contact. "Ava," he mumbled, voice barely audible. "I'm here," Ava said firmly, relieved to hear him speak even a little. She kept her tone calm. "You're going to be okay. Just lie still. Help is coming." Jordan's unfocused eyes cracked open for a second. He seemed to recognize her, but confusion clouded his features. He tried to say something, but only a strained wheeze came out. Ava noticed his breathing was still shallow, and his skin felt damp with cold sweat. She silently urged the ambulance to hurry. Within minutes, which felt like hours, the elevator doors opened and 2 paramedics rushed in with their equipment. Ava quickly explained what she knew. "He's been overworking, not eating or sleeping. I found him collapsed like this." He came to for a moment, but not fully. The EMTs nodded and took over. One checked his vital signs, while the other fitted an oxygen mask over Jordan's nose and mouth. "Blood pressure's very low," one murmured. They started in 4-line to get fluids into him and hooked up a portable heart monitor. A rapid beeping filled the hallway. "Possible cardiac arrhythmia," the first paramedic said to the second. Then to Ava he added, "It's good you found him. We need to transport him now." As they lifted Jordan onto a stretcher, his hand weakly reached out and grasped the sleeve of Ava's shirt. His eyes opened again, glassy but terrified. Through the oxygen mask she heard him whisper, "Don't leave." Ava's heart constricted. In that moment, he wasn't her boss or a powerful CEO. He was a vulnerable man, afraid and in need. She placed her hand over his and squeezed reassuringly. "I'm right here. I'll stay with you," she promised. She rode with him in the ambulance, sirens blaring as they cut through the city night. Inside the harshly lit compartment, Ava sat near Jordan's head, one hand braced on the stretcher to steady herself as they bumped along. Jordan drifted in and out of awareness, At one point, he tugged the oxygen mask aside and rasped, "Ava, why?" "Shh," she soothed, gently adjusting the mask back over his face. "Save your strength, Jordan. I'm here. You collapsed, but you'll be all right." Her use of his first name seemed to calm him. He closed his eyes, holding on to the sound of her voice. At Atlanta General Hospital, Jordan was rushed into the ER. A nurse directed Ava to wait in the family area, but she refused to go far. Hovering just outside the curtained bay where doctors evaluated him, through the small gap, she saw them start an IV drip and administer medication to stabilize his heartbeat. After an agonizing half hour, a doctor finally approached. "Are you family?" he asked gently. I work for Mr. Miles," Ava replied, deciding honesty was best. "There's a cousin listed in his phone as emergency contact, but I don't think he has close family nearby. I'm the only one here." The doctor gave a reassuring nod. "Understood. Well, he's stable now, but it was a close call. It appears he had a syncopal episode likely brought on by exhaustion and dehydration, which led to an irregular heart rhythm. Essentially, his body gave out from overwork. He's also got a mild concussion from the fall. We're moving him to observation overnight. He's awake and asking for someone named Ava." Relief flooded through her. "That's me," she said. "Can I see him?" "Certainly," the doctor smiled. "Sometimes a familiar face is the best medicine. He's in room 4, just down that hall." Ava hurried to the room and quietly pushed back the curtain. Jordan lay on a hospital bed, propped up slightly by pillows. The harsh fluorescent light revealed how drained he looked, pale with dark stubble, starting to shadow his jaw and a bandage taped above his right eyebrow. He turned his head at the sound of her steps. His eyes, though tired, lit with recognition. "Ava," he croaked. He seemed both relieved and embarrassed to see her. Ava managed a warm smile as she stepped closer to the bed. "Hi, how are you feeling?" Jordan let out a weak chuckle. "Like I got hit by a truck," he admitted. "The doctor told me I passed out." "You did," Ava affirmed softly. "Gave us all quite a scare." He closed his eyes for a moment. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that, and that you're still here so late. You should be home." "Don't apologize," Ava chided gently. "I'm just glad I came back when I did." She pulled a chair up to his bedside. "Besides, I wasn't going to leave you alone." Jordan looked at her, this young woman who until tonight had been a near stranger, and felt a swell of gratitude and something deeper he couldn't name. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "You saved my life, Ava." She shook her head modestly. "I did what anyone would do." A faint wry smile touched his lips. "Not just anyone. Plenty of people would have just called 911 and left. You stayed." He paused. "I remember. You held my hand in the ambulance." Ava blushed slightly. "You were scared. I didn't want you to feel alone." Jordan's gaze softened. For a long moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. In the sterile hush of the hospital room, a fragile bond had formed. A nurse came in to check Jordan's monitors, breaking the moment. Ava stepped back politely. When the nurse left, Jordan cleared his throat. "I probably gave you the worst night of work ever." "It's not exactly in the job description." "No," Ava teased lightly, "but I'm just happy you're okay." He ran a hand over his face, clearly embarrassed. "This has never happened before. I push myself hard, but I guess I pushed too far." Ava arched an eyebrow. "You think?" Her gentle sarcasm earned another soft laugh from him. Message received. "I've been told I'm a workaholic, but I never listened until now." Ava's eyes drifted to the 4 in his arm and the monitors tracking his heartbeat. "Sometimes it takes a scare to wake us up." Jordan followed her gaze and grimaced. "I've been an idiot, and an ungrateful one at that." He met her eyes. "I realize I haven't exactly been the kindest or most attentive person to you at work, or to anyone, really, lately. I'm sorry." Ava was disarmed by the sincerity in his tone. "You've had a lot on your shoulders," she offered. "Still no excuse," he murmured. "My mother raised me better." He hesitated, then added quietly, She passed a few years ago. If she were here, I doubt I'd be in this situation. She would have slapped the phone out of my hand and told me to get some sleep. Ava smiled. She sounds like a smart lady. The smartest, Jordan agreed wistfully. She always said I'd work myself into an early grave if I wasn't careful. I just got so caught up. After she died, it was easier to lose myself in work than face the loneliness. Ava's heart ached at that admission. It explained so much: his solitary home, the absence of personal touches, the relentless drive. She understood throwing oneself into duty to avoid pain. "I'm really sorry about your mom," she said softly. "Losing parents, it leaves a hole that nothing quite fills." He nodded, eyes distant. "What about you? You mentioned a brother. Do you have anyone helping you look after him?" She shook her head. "It's just me and Malik now. We lost our parents a few years back too. I had to leave college to take care of him. It's been challenging, but we manage." Jordan's expression was one of admiration and regret. "You've been carrying all that, and I never knew. I never bothered to know. Yet you were there for me without hesitation." Ava reached out and lightly touched his hand on the bed rail, a comforting gesture. "Don't beat yourself up right now. Just focus on getting better. That's all the thanks I need." Jordan turned his palm up under her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I promise I will. I owe you that. I owe you everything." Ava felt a warmth in her cheeks and withdrew her hand gently, not wanting to overstep. "You should rest. Doctor's orders." He smiled. "Will you stay, at least until I fall asleep?" I'd feel better." Her heart fluttered at the vulnerability in his request. "Of course. I'll be right here." Jordan settled back against the pillows, his body finally yielding to exhaustion now that he knew he wasn't alone. Within minutes, he drifted off, his breathing steady. Ava watched over him, ensuring he was truly okay before she allowed herself to relax. In the quiet dim of the hospital room, Ava couldn't help but reflect on the strange twist of fate that placed her here. That morning, she had been just his housekeeper, invisible in the background. Now she'd seen him at his most human and fragile. Ava Turner had slipped through the cracks of Jordan Miles's high walls, and neither of them yet understood how significantly this night would change their lives. As dawn's first light crept into the room, Jordan slept peacefully, thanks to sheer exhaustion and the relief of knowing someone cared. Ava sat nearby, fighting her own fatigue, determined to watch over him a little longer. In those early hours, she silently promised that she wouldn't let him face the coming days alone. Whether he knew it or not, Jordan had someone on his side now. Jordan returned home the next afternoon after a barrage of tests and stern lectures from his doctors. To his surprise, as he stepped out of the car service at his building, his entrance, Ava was there in the lobby, concern evident on her face. She wasn't scheduled to work that day, but she hadn't been able to rest easy without knowing he was truly all right. His chest warmed at the sight of her. He wore casual clothes for once, a simple polo shirt and jeans, and looked more approachable than the crisp executive she usually saw. "Ava," he greeted, managing a genuine smile despite the fatigue. "You didn't have to come, but I'm glad you did. I wanted to make sure you got home safe," she said, falling in step as he walked toward the elevators. "And I thought you might need some help around the house for a few days while you recover." He opened his mouth to insist he was fine on his own, but the truth was he felt shaky and weak. Moreover, the idea of her company was surprisingly comforting. "If you're willing, I'd appreciate it," Jordan admitted. "I can arrange with the agency to have you assigned here full-time until I'm back on my feet." Ava nodded. "I already let them know I'll be assisting you. They were happy to clear my other duties for the week." She didn't mention that the agency was positively thrilled to have one of their staff personally, requested by Jordan Miles, and that Jordan had offered to compensate for any inconvenience. For Ava, this wasn't about the money, though. After last night, she felt invested in making sure he truly recovered. Over the next few days, Jordan followed doctor's orders and stayed home from the office. At first, he tried to work remotely, but Ava firmly limited his screen time. On her very first day nursing him, she caught him on a business call and boldly walked over to shut his laptop. "Doctor's rules," she said, fixing him with a no-nonsense stare. Jordan blinked in surprise. "That was my CFO on the line." "And now he'll have to wait," Ava interjected. "Your health comes first, remember?" For a heartbeat, Jordan looked ready to object. Then he broke into a sheepish grin. "Yes, ma'am." To his own astonishment, he didn't mind surrendering his authority to Ava in that moment. In fact, he found it oddly endearing that she cared enough to be strict. It turned out to be one of the most peaceful weeks of Jordan's adult life. Without the constant pressure of meetings and calls, he rediscovered small pleasures he'd long forgotten. In the mornings, Ava would open the balcony doors to let fresh air in and practically force him to sit outside for breakfast. One morning she brought him a plate of fluffy scrambled eggs and fruit she'd prepared in his gourmet kitchen, which he had rarely used himself. As they ate in the gentle sun, Jordan realized he couldn't recall the last time he'd shared a meal with someone at home. Ava proved to be attentive but never overbearing. She made sure he took his medications and stayed hydrated, but also gave him space to nap or quietly read one of the novels she'd noticed on his bookshelf, a gift from his late mother he hadn't had time to open until now. In the afternoons, if he felt up for conversation, she would chat with him about little everyday things or whatever show she'd been watching with Malik. Jordan found these talks oddly rejuvenating. There was a lightness to Ava's presence that made the penthouse feel less like a sterile glass box and more like a home. One grey afternoon, 3 days into his recovery, a summer thunderstorm rolled over the city, drenching Atlanta in warm rain. The lights were low in the penthouse, and the rhythmic patter against the windows created a cozy cocoon. Jordan lounged on the couch, idly flipping through channels on the TV while Ava folded laundry. Nearby, she had insisted on catching him up on household chores that had fallen by the wayside. "This is the most I've relaxed in I don't know how long," Jordan said, turning off the television and picking up a book instead. Ava glanced over at him and smiled. "Sometimes your body forces you to take the break. Your mind won't." He chuckled. "True. And sometimes someone else forces it." He shot her a playful look. "I'm looking at you, Nurse Ava." She laughed. "Any regrets?" "Not a one," he replied softly. There was a comfortable silence as he read, and she tidied up, both at ease in each other's quiet company. As the rain fell outside, they traded personal stories. Jordan spoke about growing up in a modest neighborhood, feeling like an outsider as one of the few black students in his program, and how losing his mother to cancer soon after his first success left him lonely at the top. In turn, Ava opened up about putting her nursing studies on hold to raise Malik after their parents died. In these shared confidences, they discovered common ground in loss, responsibility, and perseverance. Hour by hour, the wall between them fell away, friendship blossoming in its place, and beneath it, an unspoken spark of attraction began to glow. Time passed more quickly than either realized. By the time the storm eased and the city grew quiet, it was nearly midnight. Ava noticed the late hour with a start. "I should go," she said reluctantly, setting aside the last folded shirt. "I didn't realize it was so late. Malik will wonder where I am." Jordan's heart sank a little at the thought of her leaving. For days now, he had grown used to her being the last person he saw before sleeping, and the first when he woke. Still, he nodded in understanding. "Of course, I didn't mean to keep you. You needed the company," Ava said, almost defensively. I enjoyed talking with you." She picked up her purse, hovering uncertainly as if there were more she wanted to say. "I enjoyed it too," Jordan replied, walking her to the door. He felt a sudden impulse to say something that would make her stay, but he knew she had her own life and responsibilities. "Thank you, Ava, for everything. You've made this recovery actually pleasant." She smiled, that warm, sincere smile that reached her eyes. "You're welcome, and I'll be back first thing in the morning, okay? Don't even think about checking your email before I get here." Jordan raised a hand in surrender, smiling. "Yes, ma'am," he repeated, earning a soft laugh from her. On impulse, Ava added, "If you can't sleep or need anything, just call me. I mean it, Jordan nodded, touched by her genuine concern. He watched her step into the elevator. "Good night, Ava." "Good night, Jordan," she replied, meeting his gaze for a lingering moment as the doors slid closed. That night, Jordan slept deeply and without nightmares for the first time in ages. The next morning, Ava arrived bright and early, balancing a bag of groceries on her hip. She found Jordan in the kitchen, attempting to cut up a banana for cereal one-handed while holding his phone in the crook of his neck. She cleared her throat, making him jump. "Multitasking already?" she teased. Caught red-handed, Jordan sheepishly put down the phone, which was indeed open to his email. "Just deleting some junk mail," he fibbed. Ava rolled her eyes but smiled. She set the grocery bag on the counter. "I picked up a few things. Your fridge was looking pretty sparse." "You didn't have to do that," he said, peering into the bag. There were fresh vegetables, chicken, a loaf of bakery bread, real food instead of the protein bars and takeout containers that usually sustained him. "I wanted to," Ava insisted. "You need proper meals if you're going to get your strength back." Under her watchful eye, Jordan obeyed a regimen of healthy eating and moderate exercise, short walks down the hallway, some gentle stretching. With each day his strength grew, and so did their familiarity. Politeness gave way to friendly banter. Jordan discovered Ava's sharp wit when she wasn't holding back, like when he grumbled about the taste of green smoothies she made, and she quipped, "Consider it penance for all those energy drinks that landed you in here." One evening toward the end of the week, Ava decided to cook a full dinner, determined to prove that healthy food could be delicious. Jordan insisted on helping, rolling up the sleeves of his soft cotton Henley shirt and proclaiming himself her sous chef. Ava couldn't help but laugh at how eager he was, so different from the aloof man who used to barely acknowledge her presence. They settled on making a simple chicken and vegetable stew, one of Ava's mother's old recipes. While Ava chopped vegetables, Jordan handled the chicken, following her instructions to season and sear the pieces. The kitchen, rarely used before, came alive with the sounds of sizzling and the warm, savory aroma of home cooking. At one point, as Ava was coating chicken in flour, she ended up with a white smudge on her cheek. Jordan noticed and, without thinking, reached out to brush it off. "You've got a little something," he said softly, his thumb gently wiping the flour from her skin. Ava's hands froze, a carrot and peeler forgotten in her grasp. The casual touch sent a small jolt through them both. Her eyes flickered up to Jordan's. They stood barely a foot apart in the kitchen's cozy confines, the soft R&B playlist Ava had put on humming in the background. "Thanks," Ava managed, her voice catching in her throat. Her heart thudded as she realized how close they were. She became acutely aware of the warmth radiating from Jordan's body, the subtle spice of his cologne mixed with the scent of thyme and rosemary from the stew. Jordan's fingers lingered near her cheek even after the flour was gone, as if reluctant to break the contact. His gaze dropped to her lips for a split second before meeting her eyes again. The air suddenly felt charged, humming with an energy far different from the kitchen's earlier levity. Time seemed to slow. Ava could feel her pulse fluttering in her throat. "Jordan," she whispered, not even sure what she meant to say, only that his name felt right on her lips. He moved a fraction closer. "Tell me to stop and I will," he murmured, giving her the chance to step away. But Ava didn't want to stop. Instead of pulling back, she tilted her face up toward his. Her silent consent was all Jordan needed. In the next breath, he closed the gap and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative and searching. Jordan's lips were soft and warm against Ava's, and she responded in kind, her eyes fluttering shut. A quiet sigh escaped her as days, perhaps weeks, of unspoken attraction finally found its outlet. The dam broke. Jordan cupped her face with one hand, the other slipping around her waist to draw her closer. Ava let the peeler clatter to the counter, her now free hand finding its way to Jordan's shoulder for support as the kiss deepened. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of their simmering stew, but neither paid it any mind now. All Jordan could taste was the faint sweetness of Ava's lip balm and the intoxicating newness of someone who cared for him as a person, not a CEO. All Ava could feel was the warmth of his embrace and the thrilling realization that this powerful, guarded man was kissing her with such tenderness. They finally parted when breathing became necessary. Both of them were slightly wide-eyed at what had just happened. Ava's cheeks flushed a lovely rose as she searched Jordan's face for cues. Had this been a mistake? But the way he looked at her, his eyes dark and full of wonder, banished that thought. "Ava," he began, voice husky. He rested his forehead against hers, trying to gather words. She placed a finger gently on his lips, shaking her head with a soft smile. "It's okay," she whispered. They didn't need to analyze it right now. It just was. The stew was all but forgotten. They managed to turn off the stove before the food burnt, sharing laughter at nearly ruining the meal. In the end, they did eat, but sitting side by side at the kitchen island, knees touching under. The bar, feeding each other occasional bites between stolen kisses and bouts of laughter. It felt delightfully domestic, as if they had done this 100 times before, even though each moment was fresh and exhilarating. As dusk deepened into night, one thing led to another. The emotional intimacy of the past days and the physical closeness of tonight built to a tipping point neither wanted to resist. Jordan scooped Ava into his arms with surprising ease, making her squeal in surprise and then giggle. He carried her down the hall, past the very spot he'd collapsed days earlier, into the sanctuary of his bedroom. There, bathed in the soft glow of a single bedside lamp, they undressed, each other slowly, between tender kisses and whispered assurances. Jordan's hands trembled slightly as he brushed aside each piece of Ava's clothing, revealing the curve of her shoulder, the softness of her waist. She responded with equal care, sliding his shirt off, her fingers tracing the defined lines of his chest, mindful of the faint bruise on his temple from the fall. They moved as if in a dream. When they finally lay down together, skin to skin beneath the cool sheets, it was with a gentle sigh that seemed to come from both of them. They made love with a sweetness and passion born from trust and genuine affection. Jordan was attentive to every breath and gasp from Ava, and she to every trembling caress of his hands. In the quiet stillness of that night, their two lonely souls found solace in one another. Afterward, they curled up together under the covers. Ava's head rested on Jordan's chest, listening to the steady, comforting thump of his heart. His arm was wrapped around her bare shoulders, holding her close, as if afraid she might vanish. For a long time, neither spoke. They didn't need to. Ava traced idle patterns on Jordan's skin, thinking how crazy the past week had been, how this man had gone from stranger to something far more. Jordan stared at the ceiling, marveling at how right it felt to have her in his arms, how for the first time in years he didn't feel alone. "I could stay like this forever," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Ava smiled against his chest. "Me too," she said softly. Yet as the room drifted into the velvety darkness of midnight, reality began to creep back into Jordan's mind. He had broken a major rule, sleeping with someone who worked for him. More than that, he had opened his heart, and that terrified him. What now? A voice nagged at him. Would she expect a relationship? Did he want one? Could he handle one? A flurry of conflicting thoughts kept him awake long after Ava slipped into contented sleep beside him. In the pale hours of early morning, Jordan carefully disentangled himself from her warm limbs and slipped out of bed. Ava stirred but didn't wake as he pulled on sweatpants and wandered to the living room, mind churning. The truth was, he wanted her more than he'd wanted anyone in a very long time. The depth of emotion he felt scared him because it was something he couldn't wholly control or predict, and Jordan Miles lived by control. As dawn broke, he had convinced himself that he needed to slow things down and think. The vulnerability of the night made him feel exposed. By the time Ava emerged from the bedroom, hair tousled and wrapped in one of his robes, Jordan had donned his CEO armor once more. He stood by the coffee machine, freshly showered and dressed in a crisp button-down, as if preparing for a day at work, despite still being officially on medical leave. "Good morning," Ava said shyly. The sight of him so put together sent a tiny ripple of uncertainty through her. Was he regretting last night? Morning, Jordan replied, offering a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. I hope you slept well. Ava felt a slight chill at his tone. I did. How about you? You were gone when I woke up. She ventured. He busied himself pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Couldn't sleep much more. He lied. Truthfully, he'd barely slept at all after leaving the bed. I've been up going over some emails I missed. He handed her a mug. Ava accepted it, studying him. He was avoiding eye contact, his posture a touch too stiff. This wasn't the relaxed, gentle Jordan who had held her through the night. This was the distant man she'd first met, the guarded CEO. Uncertainty gnawed at her. Jordan, about last night, she began. He finally looked at her, and the conflict in his eyes was evident. Ava, He cleared his throat. Last night was unexpected. It wasn't your fault. I take full responsibility. I don't want you to feel awkward or worry about your job. You've done nothing wrong. Awkward and professional. Ava's heart sank. I wasn't worried about my job, she said quietly. I was more concerned about us. Jordan winced slightly, setting his coffee down. I just think we might have gotten carried away. I value you, your work, and your help this week, more than I can say. I don't want to ruin that by complicating things. Complicating things, Ava echoed, tasting the bitterness of that phrase. A mix of hurt and anger swirled in her chest. I see. He stepped toward her, hands out in a placating gesture. Please understand. My life is messy. I have a company to run, a reputation. Office relationships can be... I get it, Ava interjected, not wanting to hear more. She set the coffee mug down as her hands had started to tremble. She felt heat behind her eyes but refused to cry. You don't have to explain. Last night was a moment out of time. Let's just leave it at that. Jordan hated the pain he saw flashing across her face. He hated himself for putting it there. But he couldn't take his words back. His fears, unfortunately, were louder than his heart at that moment. Ava, I'm so... She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't apologize. Like you said, we got carried away. It's fine. Her voice wavered only slightly. Gathering her dignity, Ava inhaled and stood taller. I should go home for a bit. You seem well enough, and Malik probably needs me. Jordan nodded mutely, regret chewing at him. Take the day off, he said softly. With pay. You've earned it. She gave a tight smile. Thanks. Ava changed back into her clothes from the day before, and within minutes she was at the door with her purse, trying to ignore the hollow ache in her chest. Jordan trailed a step behind her, looking like he wanted to reach out, but didn't know how. Will I see you tomorrow? He asked, hating how unsure he sounded. Ava paused at the threshold. Part of her wanted to quit on the spot to salvage her pride. But she needed the income, and she wasn't about to make a rash decision while emotions ran high. I'll come tomorrow to do my job, she replied evenly, same time as usual. Her formality pierced him, but he nodded. All right. She managed a polite nod and left without another word. The door closed, and Jordan felt it like a punch. He scrubbed a hand over his face, cursing under his breath. He had wanted to ask her to stay, to talk it through, to tell her the truth, that he was scared of how much he felt for her. But years of emotional walls didn't come down easily. Instead, he'd likely just thrown away the best thing that had happened to him. Ava cried on the bus ride home, silent tears rolling down her cheeks as she sat by the window. Thankfully, the bus was nearly empty. By the time she reached her apartment, she had steeled herself. She wasn't going to fall apart. She had more than herself to think about. Over the next week, their dynamic shifted back to something polite and professional, yet with an unspoken tension that hadn't been there before. Jordan returned to work, burying himself in it more fiercely than ever, as if to drown out thoughts of her. Ava continued to come by the penthouse as scheduled, but only during the days. She no longer stayed into the evenings. They spoke cordially about household matters, but their personal conversations ceased. It was as if both had silently agreed to rewind to a time before warm breakfasts on the balcony and kisses in the kitchen. But the heart doesn't easily forget. Ava would catch Jordan looking at her when he thought she wasn't aware, a lingering, conflicted gaze. And Jordan would find little reminders of her everywhere, her favorite chamomile tea in his cupboard, the soft throw blanket she brought him during a nap still draped over his couch. They were both longing and afraid, stuck in a limbo of their own making. Just as this awkward equilibrium settled, life threw another curveball, one that would change things forever. A few weeks after that night, Ava started feeling bouts of nausea in the mornings. At first, she blamed the stress. Her appetite fluctuated. The smell of certain foods made her gag. One morning, cleaning an office bathroom, she had to rush into a stall herself sick. It dawned on her that she was late. Her period, always regular, hadn't come. Ava's hand trembled as she counted the days. She was over 2 weeks late. After work, she stopped by a pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test, her heart pounding. At home, with Malik out at a study group, Ava stared at the little white stick in the bathroom. 2 pink lines. Positive. Ava sank onto the edge of the tub, a tear slipping down her cheek as a storm of emotions crashed over her. Pregnant, with Jordan's child. In an instant, she saw 2 diverging paths, tell him or don't. And given how things had ended between them, she was terrified of his response. He might think she'd done it on purpose, or worse, that it was an inconvenience to be handled. Her heart knew better. Jordan had been tender and caring that night, not cruel. But her pride and fear whispered that if he truly wanted her, he wouldn't have pushed her away. Would he even believe the baby was his, or would he assume she was trying to trap him for his wealth? For now, she kept the news to herself, but nature had more surprises in store. At her first ultrasound appointment, Ava nearly fainted when the technician turned to her with wide eyes and said, "I'm seeing more than one." Oh my. "Miss Turner, it looks like 4 heartbeats." 4? Ava squeaked, thinking she misheard. Surely not. But as the doctor confirmed, she was indeed carrying quadruplets. Pause for a moment. If you were in Ava's shoes, pregnant with 4 babies, heartbroken and alone, would you tell Jordan the truth or protect your peace and walk away? Be honest in the comments below. I'm reading every answer. She walked out of the clinic in a daze, clutching prenatal pamphlets with shaking hands. 4 babies. How could this be real? Naturally conceived quadruplets were rare, but it was happening to her. Overwhelmed, didn't begin to describe what she felt. That evening, she sat Malik down and gently broke the news that he was going to be an uncle. It took him a minute to process. 4 babies, all at once, he exclaimed. Eyes like saucers. Ava nodded, teary-eyed and anxious. "I know it's a lot. I didn't plan this, Malik." Her brother was stunned but quickly gathered himself. "It's okay. We'll figure it out." "But the father, does he know?" Ava swallowed hard. "The father is Jordan." Malik's eyebrows shot up. He knew she'd been acting a bit off after that week with Jordan, but this news was beyond anything he'd imagined. "You have to tell him," he said immediately. "He has a right to know. And those babies deserve their father." Ava's face hardened a touch. "He made it clear he didn't want me in his life, Malik. Why would I subject myself to more rejection? Or worse, what if he tries to take them, or he accuses me of trying to get his money?" Malik put a hand on her shoulder, gentling his tone. "He didn't seem like that kind of man to me, from what you've told me." She shook her head, eyes flashing with hurt. "I can't risk it. I won't beg anyone to be with me. Not even for this. I can do it alone." She placed a protective hand on her belly, as if already shielding her unborn children from any potential heartbreak. "We'll manage. I have to believe that—" Malik looked ready to argue, then thought better of it. He pulled Ava into a hug instead. "You're the strongest person I know. If anyone can handle this, it's you. But you're not alone. I'm here, okay?" Ava clung to her brother, tears finally falling. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm sorry to throw this on you." "Hey, we're family," Malik murmured. "We take care of each other. Always." Ava's pregnancy progressed, and with 4 babies to grow, it took a toll on her petite frame. By her second trimester, carrying quadruplets made physical work impossible. Ava had to quit her housekeeping job and go on early bed rest for health reasons, relying on savings, assistance, and community kindness to get by. The babies arrived early at 31 weeks via emergency C-section, each weighing barely 3 pounds. They spent weeks in the NICU, tiny fighters hooked to tubes and monitors, while Ava visited and prayed over them every day. At last, all 4 grew strong enough to come home. She named them Omari, Zaire, Imani, and Nala, names carrying hopes of faith, strength, and success. The first year, as a single mother of quadruplets, was a blur of midnight feedings and endless diapers, but also full of love. Ava poured her heart into raising 4 happy, healthy babies, finding joy in their first smiles and babbling laughs despite the exhaustion. The quads were nearly a year old when Malik came home one afternoon bursting with excitement. Ava was in the living room, surrounded by a controlled chaos of toys and baby blankets, trying to get Omari and Nala to nap while the other 2 played quietly. "You won't believe this, Ava," Malik announced, barely keeping his voice down in respect for the half-asleep infants. "I got the internship." Ava looked up from patting Omari's back. "Internship? That tech incubator program you applied for?" "Yes." Malik grinned ear to ear. "Jordan Miles's foundation is funding it, the one I told you about. They're taking a handful of college students to mentor, and I got in. I'll be working at the Community Tech Center downtown." Hearing Jordan's name sent Ava's heart into a confusing flutter of pride and pain. She mustered a genuine smile for her brother. "Malik, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." She gave him a careful hug, mindful of the baby now sleeping against her shoulder. Malik hugged back, then added in a tentative voice, "There's a chance I might see him, Jordan, at the incubator. They mentioned he stops by occasionally to check on the program. Are you okay with that?" Ava drew a breath. It had been over 2 years since she'd seen Jordan. 2 years since that painful morning in his penthouse and all the turmoil that followed. In truth, she had no idea how she'd feel if their paths crossed. But she also knew Atlanta wasn't a small town. The chance of running into him had always been there. Perhaps time had healed enough wounds. "I'll be fine," she said, willing it to be true. "Don't worry about me. This is about you and your future. You focus on impressing them and learning everything you can, okay?" He nodded, relief in his eyes. "All right. Oh, and I know you go to the community center sometimes to volunteer. If you're uncomfortable." Ava raised a hand. "Stop. I'm not going to avoid a place that does good for our community just because Jordan might appear. I'll manage. Besides, he probably wouldn't even recognize me now." She glanced at herself, hair pulled back in a simple scarf, an old t-shirt stained with a bit of baby food, and a little extra softness around her once trim waist from pregnancy. She certainly felt far removed from the neatly uniformed housekeeper in his pristine penthouse. Malik didn't argue further. He knew better than anyone how determined Ava was to stand on her own feet. Over the next several months, Malik thrived at his internship, and Ava occasionally helped out at the tech community center too, usually with her babies in tow. The center was a vibrant place where neighborhood kids and young adults gathered to work on coding projects, robotics, and startup ideas. Ava volunteered to organize supplies or do clerical work for a few hours a week. It gave her a break. From the isolation of home and the babies, plenty of doting attention from everyone at the center. She hadn't seen Jordan, though she sometimes caught wind of his name in conversations. Apparently, he was sponsoring more than one charitable project these days. Some said he'd become quite the philanthropist of late. If only they knew, Ava thought wryly, that maybe guilt was driving his generosity. She often wondered if Jordan ever thought of her. Did he regret that night? Did he have any clue about the 4 little lives he was responsible for? She doubted it. He was probably working 80-hour weeks, dating some suitable executive. Type from his elite circles, someone without complications. Fate, however, had a plan to bring their worlds colliding back together. A couple of weeks into Malik's internship, the community center organized a big open house event to showcase the projects being developed. There were speeches by local leaders and demonstrations by the students. Ava agreed to help greet guests and had even baked brownies for the bake sale table. It was a busy day at the center, packed with visitors and families. By now, her quadruplets were 18 months old, active toddlers who kept her on her toes. Ava had brought them along, figuring it was a family-friendly event, and Malik was there to help as well. Little Zaire and Omari were wobbling around on their unsteady toddler legs, chasing one another with squeals of delight, while Nala sat playing with blocks near Ava's feet, and Imani clung shyly to her pant leg, thumb in mouth, observing the crowd with wide eyes. Ava was chatting with another volunteer at the refreshment table when she felt a shift in the atmosphere, a hush of recognition that rippled through some of the students nearby. She looked up to see what had caused it. Standing near the entrance, listening to the program director's introduction, was Jordan Miles. Ava's heart lurched so hard, she thought it might leap out of her chest. He was partly turned away from her, so she caught his strong profile first, the familiar cut of his jawline, the broad shoulders beneath a tailored charcoal blazer. He looked as impeccably put together as ever, but there was something different too. His expression as he listened was attentive, humble even, not the cool detachment he often wore in boardrooms. She hadn't seen that face in person in over 2 years, and suddenly it was like no time had passed, and every moment had passed, all at once. Ava's mouth went dry. Instinctively, she moved to scoop up Imani, holding her daughter as a sort of shield and comfort. Jordan thanked the director who had been speaking to him and turned fully into the room. That's when his eyes swept the space and locked onto Ava. He froze. For a heartbeat, he didn't trust his eyes. Could that be her? The bustling sounds of the open house faded around him as his vision tunneled on the woman across the room with a toddler on her hip and 3 more tiny tots around her. Her face. It was Ava's, unmistakably Ava's, just as beautiful as he remembered. She looked stunned, standing there as still as he was. Jordan's pulse thundered in his ears. He felt rooted to the spot. Why was she here? And were those? His gaze dropped to the children around her. 4 children, close in age, with curly dark hair and warm brown skin. An eerie sense of familiarity washed over him as one of the boys toddled into clearer view. The child's eyes. He knew those eyes. He saw them every morning in the mirror. Ava, seeing Jordan's attention now zeroed in on the kids, felt her stomach twist. Nala, sensing her mother's tension, wrapped her little arms around Ava's leg. Zaire had stopped running and stood with thumb in mouth, staring curiously at the stranger across the room. Omari plopped down on his diapered bottom, oblivious, while Imani hid her face in Ava's shoulder. With an apologetic murmur to the volunteer beside her, Ava stepped away from the table. Her heart hammered as she watched Jordan mutely excuse himself from the director and start walking slowly toward her, eyes never leaving her and the children. Time felt surreal as Jordan crossed the distance. Ava saw 1,000 emotions play over his face. Shock, confusion, hope, hurt. She unconsciously tightened her hold on Imani and put a protective hand on Zaire's shoulder as he stood next to her. When Jordan finally stood in front of Ava, he opened his mouth, but no sound came out at first. His eyes swept over each child in astonishment. Imani peeked out at him, pressing her face shyly into Ava's neck. Zaire leaned against Ava's leg, staring up at the stranger. Nala peeked from behind Ava's calf, and Omari, sensing the heavy mood, crawled his way back to his mother and sat at her feet. Ava, Jordan managed at last, his voice barely above a whisper. Are these? Ava felt a swell of emotion surge up, an urge to cry and shout and laugh all at once. She steadied herself. This moment was inevitable, perhaps, but it was happening on her turf, with her babies looking on. She lifted her chin. Jordan, meet Omari, Zaire, Imani, and Nala, she said quietly. Her eyes met his, brimming. Our children. Jordan's breath caught. Our children. The world tilted. He had to remind himself to breathe. In the span of seconds, His life had utterly changed. He looked at the babies, their ages, their features, all aligning with that night that was forever etched in his memory. How could he have been so blind? How could so much time have passed? He sank to a knee without even thinking, bringing himself to the toddlers. Level as tears he didn't realize were falling blurred his vision. Hello, he tried to say to them, but his voice broke. Little Zaire, ever bold, stepped forward and poked Jordan's knee curiously. Hi, the boy babbled, not fully understanding but sensing this person might be important. Jordan let out a choked laugh, a single tear escaping down his cheek. He gingerly reached out and placed a hand on Zaire's back, looking up at Ava for permission. She gave a slight nod, eyes glistening. Omari crawled over to cling to Ava's other leg, looking at Jordan with big solemn eyes, the exact shade and shape of Jordan's own. The sight of that nearly undid Jordan completely. Those were his eyes on his son's face. Jordan looked up at Ava, voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? It wasn't accusatory, more a plaintive, hurt question. Ava swallowed, tears finally spilling free. Because I wasn't sure you wanted to know, she answered honestly, but softly so the children wouldn't hear the pain behind the words. Things were... You pushed me away, Jordan. I decided I wouldn't make either of us suffer more. I chose to do it on my own. Jordan closed his eyes for a moment, guilt crashing over him. She'd done all this alone, because of his foolish pride and fear. He rose to his feet, gently picking up Zaire as the boy tugged at his sleeve, oblivious to the adult drama. Surprisingly, Zaire let himself be held. He sensed the familiarity perhaps, or maybe Jordan just had a natural hold. The boy patted Jordan's cheek and giggled at the wet tear there. Sad, Zaire said in toddler. Speak, noticing the tear. Jordan let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. No, buddy, not sad. Well, maybe a little, but also happy. I'm very happy to meet you, he whispered, hugging his son. His son, close. Seeing Jordan hold Zaire so naturally made Ava's heart constrict. She wiped her eyes, trying to regain composure. They were starting to draw a few curious glances from others in the room. Malik, across the way, noticed the encounter and began to approach protectively, but Ava subtly signaled that it was okay. We should talk somewhere private, Ava said, voice tight with emotion. This isn't the place. Jordan tore his eyes away from the children and nodded fervently. Please. I need to understand everything, and I want to... He trailed off, looking around at the 4 little ones that were somehow his. I want to know them. God, I've missed so much. Ava placed a hand on his arm to ground him. Let's go home. Malik can finish up here and bring the car seats. She caught her brother's eye. He gave a nod of acknowledgement, reading the situation swiftly. Within the hour, they were back at Ava's modest 2-bedroom apartment. The babies, now well past their usual nap time, were cranky. Ava moved with practiced efficiency, whisking them off to their cribs. 2 cribs in the nursery, 2 in her bedroom due to space, whispering lullabies and assuring them everything was all right. Jordan hovered uncertainly near the living room, not wanting to intrude but desperate to be useful. He accepted Malik's help in warming up bottles and watched in awe as Ava expertly settled each child. It struck him what an incredible mother she was, patient, loving, organized. The realization that he had deprived her of support and himself of these moments made his chest ache. At last, the quadruplets were dozing, and Malik, after a pointed glare at Jordan, that clearly said, "Don't screw this up," took his leave to give them privacy. Ava and Jordan found themselves alone in the cozy living room, a baby monitor softly crackling on the coffee table between them. For a long moment, neither knew how to begin. Jordan was perched on the edge of the couch, leaning forward, hands clasped as if in prayer. Ava sat in the armchair across from him, arms folded as if to hold herself together. The silence was thick with all the words unsaid these past years. Jordan finally looked up, his eyes red, rimmed but earnest. Ava, I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking. I'm sorry for everything. for hurting you, for not being there, for making you think I wouldn't have wanted to know." He shook his head, self-loathing evident. "You were right to be angry with me. I was a coward." Ava felt tears welling again at his apology. She had imagined this scenario so many times, him reappearing, apologizing. But reality was messier and more emotional than fantasy. It was hard, she admitted, her voice trembling, being alone through all of it. "I was angry, so angry at you for a long time, and at myself sometimes for falling for you." Jordan flinched at her past tense phrasing, but he couldn't complain. He had earned that. "I can't change the past," he said quietly, "but please know, I never stopped thinking about you. Pushing you away was the worst mistake of my life. I thought I was doing the sensible thing for both of us, but I was wrong." He hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in him since the center. "Why didn't you reach out when you found out you were pregnant? I know I gave you reason to doubt me, but quadruplets, Ava. You shouldn't have had to shoulder that alone." Ava bit her lip, a few tears escaping despite her efforts. "I almost did, so many times. Especially when things got really hard, when I was bedridden, or when they were in the NICU struggling. I would stare at my phone and your number, and every time I convinced myself it was better not to. I was afraid, Jordan, afraid you'd reject us or feel obligated but resentful. I couldn't bear that. My pride wouldn't let me beg, and my heart was already broken. I had to protect my babies and myself, so I decided." She gestured around the apartment, at the evidence of the life she built. "I decided to do it without you." Each word was a dagger of truth. Jordan ran a hand over his face, trying to hold himself together. "I understand," he managed. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to try to earn it if you'll let me. I know it will take time, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Ava's eyes searched his, wary but hopeful. "What exactly are you saying?" He straightened up, resolve in every line of his body. "I'm saying I want to be a father to those children." "Our children," he corrected softly. "I want to be here for you, for all of you, whatever it takes. I'll take full responsibility, financially of course, but not just that. I mean physically present, changing diapers, midnight feedings, temper tantrums, everything. I've missed the first milestones, but I don't have to miss any more." Ava's breath caught. This was what she had secretly dreamed he would say on the lonely nights, rocking a fussy baby to sleep when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. But dreams weren't reality, and she had learned to guard her heart. "It's not that easy," she said, voice gentle but firm. "It's been 2 years, Jordan. The kids, they don't know you, and I don't know who you are anymore either." Her words stung, but he nodded. "Then let's get to know each other again. Let me prove who I am now." He hesitated, then added in a raw voice, "Losing you was the wake-up call I needed, even if I didn't realize it at the time. After you left, I buried myself in work again, but it was hollow. Eventually I started doing other things, philanthropy, mentoring, trying to find meaning. I think, unconsciously, I was trying to become the kind of man who might deserve a second chance, if it ever came." Ava was quiet for a long time, absorbing his confession. She could see the truth of it written on his face, the growth, the regret, the longing. Slowly, she nodded. "All right, a second chance." Jordan's eyes lit with relief and gratitude, a smile tugging at his lips for the first time that day. "You won't regret it, I promise." Thus began Jordan's path to redemption. He started coming by Ava's apartment every single day. At first it was awkward. The babies didn't know what to make of this new tall man with the gentle voice. Imani would cry whenever Jordan tried to hold her, which broke his heart a little. Omari was indifferent, more interested in his blocks. Nala treated Jordan like a new shiny toy, poking his face and tugging his hair, which made the others laugh. Zaire was the quickest to warm up, often waddling over to Jordan with a book or toy, implicitly trusting him in that wholehearted way toddlers do. Patiently, Jordan earned their trust. He learned how each liked to be held. Imani preferred a slow rocking. Omari liked a little bounce. He got up early to join Ava in the morning chaos of feeding 4 hungry mouths and changing 4 diapers. It was trial by fire. He ended up with pureed peas on his custom dress shirt more than once, but he took it in stride. If anything, each mess or fuss seemed to strengthen his resolve to be present. Beyond the tangible help, Ava found herself slowly thawing toward him. She'd watch quietly as Jordan sprawled on the living room rug, letting the kids use him as a human jungle gym, and feel a warmth in her chest that she'd tried to bury. The sight of him with their children, patient, playful, utterly devoted, healed parts of her heart she thought might stay broken. One evening, after the quadruplets had finally gone to sleep, Ava found Jordan, still in the nursery, standing over the cribs with an expression of awe. He had just successfully gotten Omari and Zaire to drift off, a small miracle. Sensing her, he turned slightly. "They're so beautiful," he whispered, as if afraid to wake them. "I can't believe I almost missed all of this." Ava stepped into the room, joining him by the soft glow of the nightlight. "But you're here now," she replied quietly. She reached, almost without thinking, to take his hand. "That's what matters." Jordan's fingers closed around hers. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his lips, gratitude and love in his eyes. It was the first intimate gesture between them since that fateful night, and it sent a familiar flutter through Ava. This time, she didn't shy away. As weeks turned into a couple of months, Jordan became an integral part of their family routine. He would take the twins, as they often called the quadruplets, humorously understating the reality, to the park alongside Ava, pushing strollers and pulling out wipes and snacks like a pro dad. He and Malik formed a friendly bond as well. Jordan got Malik a new laptop for his tech projects and promised to introduce him to some contacts in the industry. Malik, initially skeptical, grew to respect Jordan as he consistently showed up for his sister and nieces and nephews. Not everyone in Jordan's world was immediately enthusiastic about his new life, though. When a paparazzi snapped a photo of him at a local playground with Ava and the children, the tabloids had a field day. "Tech CEO's secret love children," blared one headline. Another speculated inaccurately, "nanny or wife. Mystery woman and tech mogul's quadruplets." Ava panicked when she saw the online gossip, worried that this would upset Jordan's career or that he'd feel embarrassed by them. But Jordan handled it in the way that showed Ava just how much he had grown. He called a press conference at his company headquarters the very next day. Standing before a crowd of reporters, he spoke from the heart. He introduced Ava to the world as the woman who saved my life in every way. A person can be saved, and acknowledged their 4 children with pride. He admitted his missteps frankly and announced he would be taking a step back from day-to-day operations at his company for a while to focus on his family. The news sent shockwaves through both the tech industry and the public, but largely, people were moved by the sincerity of his words. Ava watched the press conference live stream with tears in her eyes. She saw the man on the screen not as the boss who had once dismissed her, but as the partner she had always hoped he could be, accountable, loving, and unafraid to stand by his family. When Jordan arrived at her apartment afterward, she met him at the door and enveloped him in a tight hug, not caring about the cameras that still lingered on the street. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder. He hugged her back fiercely. "For what?" "For not hiding us. For choosing us," she said, voice thick with emotion. He pulled back to look at her. "Choosing you, them," he corrected with a smile, "is the best choice I've ever made." That night, for the first time in a long while, Ava invited Jordan to stay. After the children were asleep, they sat on the couch, just holding each other and talking in low voices about everything and nothing. It felt like coming home for both of them. In the following weeks, they moved forward together. Jordan, true to his word, reduced his workload significantly. He set up a comfortable new house for them, insisting they leave the cramped apartment for a spacious home with a yard where the kids could play. He picked one in a family-friendly Atlanta neighborhood, not far from the community center, showing he valued the same sense of community Ava did. The day they moved in, Ava found herself standing in a sunlit kitchen 5 times the size. of her old one, watching Jordan assemble a crib with the twins crawling around his feet. She realized her once broken heart felt whole again. On a warm evening, under the Georgia twilight, Jordan got down on one knee in that very yard, ring in hand. He poured out his heart, telling Ava that she was the love of his life, the mother of his children, and the woman who taught him what truly mattered. With tears of joy, Ava said yes, laughing as Zaire and Nala clapped their little hands at the sight of Daddy on the ground, thinking it was some sort of game. They married in a small ceremony at the community center's garden, a place that had become special to them as the scene of their reunion. Surrounded by Malik, a few close friends, and a handful of Jordan's relatives, including the once distant cousin who cried happy tears to finally meet Jordan's children, they exchanged vows. Ava walked down the makeshift aisle in a simple ivory gown, holding one sleeping toddler on her hip, while the other three tottered ahead as flower girls and ring bearers. It caused a wave of laughter when one of the babies started fussing in the middle of the vows, and Jordan paused to bounce her in his arms until she calmed. But to the couple, that chaos was perfection. I promise to cherish you and our children every day, and to never let my pride or fear come between us again, Jordan vowed, looking into Ava's shining eyes. Ava wiped a tear and replied, I promise to trust you and lean on you, and to share all the joys and burdens that life brings, side by side. When they kissed to seal their marriage, the gathering whooped and applauded. The quadruplets, startled by the noise, broke into giggles and clapped. Two, not fully understanding but happy because everyone else was. At the small reception that followed, a backyard barbecue style, per Ava's preference, for something down to earth, Jordan took a moment to step back and watch the scene. Dusk was falling, painting the sky in hues of lavender and peach. Ava was a few yards away, laughing as Malik spun one of the toddlers in a playful dance. The other kids were chasing fireflies with squeals of delight, and even a couple of Jordan's business colleagues who'd been invited were on their knees in the grass, helping catch the glowing insects. Jordan felt an overwhelming swell of emotion. This was his family. This was his life now, messy, loud, and absolutely perfect. Ava caught his eye across the way and slipped over to him. Penny for your thoughts? She asked, slipping her hand into his. He pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her waist as they both watched their children tumble over each other in the grass. I was just thinking about how lucky I am, he said softly. He turned to look at her, his eyes full of love and gratitude. Ava, you didn't just save my life, you gave it back to me. Ava felt tears prick, but these were happy tears. She rested her head against his shoulder, smiling as she watched little Omari toddle up to his daddy with a shiny beetle in hand. It's true, she murmured. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find what really matters. Jordan crouched down, scooping Omari into one arm and extending his other so Ava could lean in as well. He kissed the top of Ava's head, then pressed another tender kiss to Omari's cheek, making the boy giggle. The other three, not one to be left out, scampered over and piled into their parents' arms until the whole family was tangled in one group hug on the lawn. Laughter and squeals of Mama and Dada filled the warm evening air. In that beautiful chaos, Jordan and Ava looked at each other with a profound understanding. Their journey had been long and often painful, but it had led them here. Class differences, pride and fear had once kept them apart, but love, responsibility and forgiveness had reunited them. If this story moved you, don't leave without showing some love. Like, share, and tell me, did Ava make the right choice forgiving Jordan? Subscribe for more heartfelt stories that prove love and accountability can coexist.